Welcome to News Mongolia, where we bring you the latest stories and updates from across the nation and beyond. I'm Batsir Namshar. On News Mongolia today, Mongolia and the Republic of Austria sign a joint declaration developing Mongolia's light aircraft sector for tourism and mining. For the news, stay tuned. At the invitation of President of Mongolia, Okhnagin Khurelsukh, Federal President of the Republic of Austria, Alexander van der Bellen, is paying a state visit to Mongolia from May 25th to 28th. During the visit, important documents were signed to strengthen bilateral cooperation in diplomacy, social protection, science, culture, and development. A joint declaration was signed by Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia, Batsitsig Batmukh, and Secretary-General for Foreign Affairs at the Federal Ministry for European and International Affairs of the Republic of Austria, Nicholas Marschik. The declaration reaffirms a shared commitment to the principles of the United Nations, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and international law. The two sides agreed to strengthen cooperation within the international organizations, promote human rights and sustainable development, and align Mongolia's independent and multi-pillar third neighbor policy with Austria's global engagement for peace and security. Minister of Family, Labor and Social Protection Inge Hammarlund and Secretary-General Nicholas Marschik signed an agreement on social protection. The agreement ensures legal conditions for citizens to access pensions and local security benefits based on the periods of social insurance contributions in both countries, improving labor mobility and welfare. An agreement on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic passports was signed by Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia, Batsitsig Batmukh, and Secretary-General Nicholas Marschik. It allows diplomatic passport holders of both countries to travel visa-free for up to 90 days within a 190-day period, supporting Mongolia's strong Mongolian passport policy to expand international mobility. An agreement on the repatriation of illegally residing citizens was signed by Ambassador Tsingig Mijitdorj and Secretary-General Nicholas Marschik. This agreement establishes a framework to manage the return of citizens residing illegally and facilitates cooperation on legal migration procedures. A letter of intent on financial cooperation between the Ministry of Finance of Mongolia and the Ministry of Finance of the Republic of Austria was signed by Minister of Finance Jauchlam Bold and Secretary-General Nicholas Marschik. Building on a €40 million general loan agreement, both parties expressed interest in future cooperation, especially in healthcare, medical equipment, agriculture, infrastructure, and education. A memorandum of understanding on cooperation in exchanging new technology and best practices in mining was signed by Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources Tuang Tsewigdorj and Secretary-General Nicholas Marschik. It outlines collaboration in introducing new technology, conducting joint research, professional training, sustainable energy development, cybersecurity, SME digitization, and waste processing. A joint working group will be established to implement initiatives. President of the Mongolian Academy of Sciences, Dimbril Sotnam Sambu, and President of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, Heinz Fassmann, signed an agreement on cooperation in science. The agreement will expand cooperation on joint research, strengthen sectoral capacity, and support human resource development. Dimbril Sotnam Sambu and Heinz Fassmann also signed a protocol on implementing the Science Cooperation Agreement. It includes launching the Mobility Project to support the exchange of researchers and information and strengthen the scientific network between the two countries. A memorandum of understanding between the Mongolian State Conservatory and the University of Music and Performing Arts in Vienna was signed by Director of the Mongolian State Conservatory, Sharaf Tsirin and Director of the University of Music and Performing Arts in Vienna, Ulrika Zech. The universities will cooperate through student and facility exchange, joint music projects, collaborative works by Mongolian and Austrian composers, and academic research in traditional instruments such as marunkhor and tsor. A memorandum of understanding between the Chinggis Khan National Museum of Mongolia and the Institute of Iranian Studies of the Austrian Academy of Sciences was signed by Director of the Chinggis Khan National Museum of Mongolia, Cholong Sempeldondov, and President of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, Heinz Fassmann. The MOU sets out plans to collaborate on historical research, share archival materials, and implement joint projects. These agreements signify a strengthening of Mongolia-Austria relations and a shared commitment to cooperation in diplomacy, social protection, scientific research, the arts, migration, and sustainable development. Driven by rising demand in tourism and mining, Mongolia is rapidly expanding its light aircraft sector. While flight numbers and interest grow, industry experts warn that outdated tax policies and regulatory gaps could stall momentum.
Mongolia is actively developing its light aircraft sector to support growing demand in tourism and mining. With its vast, sparsely populated territory, light aviation is a practical solution for connecting remote regions. Light aircraft are used mainly for civil purposes, such as mail delivery, emergency medical transport, disaster response, pest control, and air sports. Now, the focus has shifted to tourism and mining, with increasing public interest in light aircraft operations.
When we first imported a plane in 2007, there were only about 20 operating in the entire country, including large ones. Now, the number has grown significantly, with many companies bringing in planes. Infrastructure development is keeping pace. Tourism has boomed recently, and the light aviation's future looks very promising.
The sector's growth also brings complexity. There are two types of light aircraft operations: commercial flights with paying customers and private or recreational flights. Commercial flights require operators to ensure safety, manage risk, and operate with a skilled team.
There are two sides to light aviation. One is revenue generating, where you charge passengers for time or rental. That means a whole team is responsible for ensuring safety. But if an individual wants to fly privately, they are assuming all responsibility, safety, knowledge, and interactions with skilled professionals. Without thorough research and investment, the aircraft could become a dead asset.
Flying an aircraft is vastly different from driving a car. Once off the ground, every decision a pilot makes affects passenger lives. Experts emphasize the need for consistent human resource training and policy-driven efforts to retain skilled aviation professionals.
Since COVID, flights have rebounded sharply. The number of aircraft has doubled, so we urgently need more skilled personnel. Light aircraft don't log many flight hours. It takes about 15 hours of flying for a pilot to become a captain. Still, pilots' skills are improving and more young people are preparing for the profession.
Despite progress, regulatory and tax issues remain challenging. Companies say legal reforms and relaxed regulations could boost capacity, expand routes, and fuel tourism.
International flights are exempt from VAT, but domestic flights are not. Our sector has advocated for a discharge for over 10 years. Because domestic charter flights still carry VAT, prices can be high, sometimes leading tourists to choose other destinations over Mongolia.
Light aviation is proving to be a profitable, high-return sector. Civil Aviation Authority officials stress the need to seize the moment by improving aircraft access, maintenance infrastructure, and emergency response readiness to support industry growth.
Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. During a visit to Italy on Monday, the European Union's Commissioner for Defense and Space stated that Putin does not want ceasefire and does not want peace. He urged the EU and the United States to intensify pressure on Moscow to help bring an end to the war in Ukraine, now entering its third year.
Overnight, Russia launched its largest drone attack yet against Ukraine, according to Ukrainian officials. This marks the third time in May that Russia has broken its own record for aerial bombardments. The intensifying campaign has further dimmed hopes for progress in any peace negotiations.
Putin does not want ceasefire and does not want peace. And perhaps United States administration also is starting to understand that Putin's wish is to continue the war, because perhaps he thinks that he is the winner in this war. Formula peace through strength, which is supported by United States administration, by Europeans, demands first of all to increase strength of Ukraine, and additional strength to Ukraine, because they are using all their efforts to be as strong as they can. Additional strength can come only from our side, from European Union and from United States. So I would wish to see that also American administration will start to understand that additional strength to Ukraine will help to achieve peace in a more effective way.
On the third consecutive night of heavy bombardment, U.S. President Donald Trump criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying he had gone crazy by escalating attacks. The renewed offensive deals another blow to U.S.-led peace efforts, especially after Moscow rejected a U.S.-proposed unconditional 30-day ceasefire that Kyiv had accepted in March.
French President Emmanuel Macron has called for deeper cooperation with Vietnam during his first official visit to the country, emphasizing the need for stability and rule of law amid global uncertainty and signing key agreements on defense, energy and trade.
French President Emmanuel Macron called on Monday for closer cooperation between Vietnam and France in increasingly unstable global landscape as he visited Hanoi as part of a Southeast Asia tour focused on strengthening regional ties. Macron emphasized the need for an order based on law at a time of both great imbalance and a return to power-driven rhetoric and intimidation. He next heads to Indonesia and Singapore. The visit comes amid trade tensions, with the U.S. threatening steep tariffs on goods from Europe. Vietnamese imports to the United States were hit with 46% tariffs, among the highest rates applied to any country in April. Macron signed more than a dozen agreements on defense, nuclear power and trade, including one with the Vietnamese budget airline company to buy 28 330-900 planes. He paid tribute at the Hanoi War Memorial and met with his counterpart Luang Quang, as well as Communist Party General Secretary Tu Lam. Macron also visited the 11th century Temple of Literature in the heart of the Vietnamese capital. France and Vietnam's sovereignty partnership could be the central axis of France's approach in the Indo-Pacific, Macron said. France has demonstrated its desire to defend international maritime law when it deployed the French carrier strike group in the South China Sea in early 2025, Macron added. China and Vietnam have long had a maritime agreement governing the Gulf of Tonkin, but have been locked in competing claims in the South China Sea over the Spratly and Parcel Islands and maritime areas. Macron said France would also support Vietnam in key sectors, including critical minerals, high-speed rail, civil nuclear energy and aerospace, and focus on partnering with the Asian nation to help it transition away from dirty coal power while adding new capacity in renewable energy and civil nuclear power. This is Macron's first trip to Vietnam since he took office in 2017. France and Vietnam share a comprehensive strategic partnership. Vietnam's highest diplomatic status also held with Russia, China, and the United States.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Goodbye.